So here I am, coming on 15 minutes early as usual. Let's see how we look here. Now, I really hate the way this lighting just makes me look kind of washed out. Everything looks washed out. Maybe I need to adjust the color on my ring light. Ugh, not that for sure. That might look a little better. I don't look so gray. Anyway, so if you're coming into the replay and you don't want the greetings time and the whatever I do for the first 15 minutes, you can skip ahead to the topic by just moving your little bar there over about 15 minutes in, because the actual starting time when I go live is at noon, but I usually go on, start the whole thing at 1:45 so we can give people more time to come in, and I can say hi to people like Cowgirl from Arizona, Kay, Thistle Moon, Rich Girl, and all these other people coming in. Catherine, is that Montana? Linda? No, whatever. I don't know what all those letters. Linda, keep it simple. Joyce. So yeah. Oh, we got someone from Uganda. Well, very cool. Good to see you here. So anyway, yeah, I like to just kind of pop in early, try to get some of the greeting stuff. I have a chance to say hi to people and get that done and out of the way. And, Kimberly, Connie, Jamie, Amita I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, or is it Amita? I'm assuming it's Amita. I'm just curious if I'm pronouncing that right. Rockin' Rhonda from Montana. It is. Oh, Jamie's from PNW as well, just like me. And we are having, I don't know about you, but here in Forks, well, okay, it's kind of dumb to say because Forks is like the wettest place in Washington State. In fact, I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think it's the wettest place in the whole United States. I think we're wetter than the UK. But at any rate, we've been having heavy rainfalls. Places are kind of flooding out a bit here. Not as bad as a couple of years back, or maybe it was about 3 years ago. It was bad. I'd never seen so much water here. But the chicken coop is getting a little wet on the inside, and oh dear. And we invited a bunch of people over for one of our Sukkot gatherings here last night, but a bunch didn't make it because they're coming from out of town and they were concerned about not being able to get back home because the rivers were going to be coming up over the road and the waters were coming up over the road in places. So I haven't heard of any roads washing out this time around though. So that's good. But Tri-Cities. Okay. Yeah. You're in the drier side of the state for certain. You might know I grew up in Wenatchee, so the weather Wenatchee is similar to Tri-Cities. Then moved to Seattle area for about 2 years. I was going to Bible college there. And I was like, wow, it rains a lot here compared to Wenatchee. I didn't know what rain was until I came here. Oh boy, howdy. Let me tell you, this area gets about 3 times the amount of rain as Seattle. And Seattle gets a lot, the Seattle area, but nothing like here. Ooh, New Zealand even. Isn't it like you say good morning. I'm wondering if it's like early morning, super early. Because I'm thinking, is there like a 12-hour time difference between you guys and us? I'm not sure. I'm not certain. But at any rate, very different time zone. I know that for certain. So yeah, early. Well, for me, I'm typically up. And hi, everyone else coming in. I'm seeing your names: Diana, Patricia, Carol, and Judy. And I probably mentioned some of these names already. Maria. Anyway, sometimes I'm up as early as 3, and my body says, it's like I really would like to sleep in longer, especially if I ended up going to bed late the night before, like happened last night. But sometimes my body decides 3 o'clock is a good time to get up. And I'm like, really? I mean, 4. I like 4. 4:30, that's good. I think I actually did sleep till 4 this morning, which was good because the night before or morning before it was 3 a.m. So anyway, so like I said, I'll get started on the topics at 12. Again, just like to pop in early if there's anything anyone wants to ask me now. We got a few minutes. Oh, and while I'm at it, let me give you this link. If you're still, these people are still doing a lot of work over there, helping with all the, victims of the floodings and whatnot. And anyway, Grindstone Ministries, that's the place we're using. I trust them, and they're doing tons of hard work. So, say I'm up at 3 to pee. Well, yeah, there's that too. But then, sometimes that's why I'm waking up at 3. But then it's like, well, I'm up. Might as well get to work. So, are yarrow leaves as good as the flowers? I'd say yes. The leaves, but they're slightly different. They have a little bit different uses, though you can use them together. I've actually made stuff using both the flowers and the leaves, like infused oil, and the flowers are going to have a better flavor for making teas out of. But like with most plants, you're going to get similar benefits, when it comes to herbs. If the leaves are usable, you're going to get similar benefits in the flowers you do the leaves, but there'll be some differences. Like dandelion, it's going to have the similar benefits to the whole entire plant, and every single part of the plant is usable and has medicinal value to it and nutrition. But where the flowers are going to have, let's say, more properties to help with the skin, just to have good skin or to help heal the skin, whereas the leaves are going to have a higher volume of minerals and just so much more. And things like the sap and the stem, it can be good for helping, applying it directly to a wart can help dry up a wart. So let's see, I learned to make homemade cleaning vinegar from you. Cool. Yes. In fact, I got a batch of vinegar going right now. You might have seen my post. I think I put a post on the YouTube, in the YouTube section. I did. So I was talking about the butterscotch apple oatmeal bars. It's a recipe I was in the process of creating. So a couple weeks ago, I said, I just had this idea and thought, this sounds good. What if I make like something that's kind of like a cookie that you press in, like a bar cookie, something you put in a pan, and put some butterscotch chips in there, and then maybe do like an apple topping and then put something on top of that. So I just kind of had ideas and just started throwing stuff together. The first one turned out really delicious, but a little too much on the sweet side. So the second batch I made a couple days ago, I cut back on the sugar, and I also wanted to make a little bit bigger batch. So I increased the flour and oats, but I didn't increase the butter. So it kind of was falling apart. The sweetness was better though, because cutting back on the sugar, it was, because when you add like butterscotch chips, they're super sweet. I think they're sweeter than most, even milk chocolate chips and white chocolate chips. So cutting back on the sugar was a must. But anyway, just so you know, I did this morning shoot the video and got did all my proper changes to the recipe, wrote it down. So I'm going to be editing that video probably today or tomorrow, but it'll be a few weeks before it publishes, but I will have the written recipe all together as well. So, when I'm creating recipes, I like to make them a couple of times before I just share the recipe, because I want to first make sure, okay, is this right? Maybe I want to try making a change and see if that's going to be better. So it's like one of the changes I made was better, while the other change I made was not. So then I go off of those 2, maybe 3 if I need to, and then create my recipe from there that I can share in a written form, as well as giving you the video where I can kind of talk you through how I do it. That's if I don't forget anything, which I almost always tend to forget something. Well, we don't have Eastern white pine needles, but I know a lot of people use pine needles for making tea. But you can do the same thing if you live in an area like ours, where spruce and other types of trees are more prominent, and you can make teas out of those too. I use spruce tips for making syrup, and you can use pine needles for that too. I've made tea out of the spruce tips. I've tried sauteing them and using them in meals, and they're so. Some people like it. I am not super crazy about it. Do I drink kombucha regularly? No. I don't have videos on kombucha. I have no videos on kombucha. So you might be thinking of someone else, or you're thinking about other videos, like where I make a fermented drink. I just call it soda, even though it's technically not soda, because it's a great soda replacement. I can make that out of any juice I want, whether it be something I press from my own apples and berries and grapes, or a juice I bought at the store, or whatever. I just make my own fermented drinks that way. There's a similarity to kombucha, but no. I used to make kombucha many years ago. I did it for a while. That was back when nobody around here had heard the word kombucha, and they just called it mushroom tea. So yeah, as such, I don't have any videos on it. I tried to get back into it again, and I'm like, okay, I remember why I stopped making it. It's just not my thing. I'm not a kombucha person. And it could be because typically kombucha is made from black tea, and I am not a huge fan of black tea. So you can make fermented drinks out of anything, black tea, which is made from the same exact plant that you get green tea, oolong tea, and white tea. It's all how the leaves are processed that makes a difference. But, and that's the Camellia sinensis. And you can do the same thing with Camellia japonica leaves. It's just that sinensis is typically used because they get a lot more leaf production, because it just really puts it on. As long as you keep pruning it back, you get a lot of young leaves. But it's still not my favorite. None of those teas. So that's just me. So I can make a fermented peppermint tea drink if I wanted, but at any rate, so yeah, it's Stacy. Stacy does kombucha, but so do several other homestead channels. But I know some people get me and Stacy confused quite a bit, which is rather flattering. Stacy and I have been friends ever since I started my YouTube channel. I was actually, at that point when I started my channel, Doug and Stacy were at about 25,000 subscribers. And I remember thinking that was so huge, having 25,000 subscribers. And they actually reached out to me and then asked me to call them because Stacy had seen me making skirts. I was doing the skirt making videos, and she was really interested. And she was the one that came up with the idea of me creating a patchwork skirt. She really wanted a patchwork skirt, and she wanted me to make it. So she just kind of basically told me what she wanted. I designed it, put it together. And that was the first patchwork skirt I made and sold. And actually, we did a barter for that one. I think she traded me a quart jar of their own raw honey, plus some, because they used to have alpacas for a while. And so they had this big box of alpaca. And because she's seen that I had the spinning wheel, but I ran out of time. My schedule all changed, and really getting to learn how to use it and how to process that alpaca. And I ended up gifting it just recently. I kept it for a long time, but I gifted it just recently to a friend who's getting into spinning and carding and doing all that stuff. But at any rate, it was still worth it. And I have Stacy to thank for all the many skirts I sold after that. Even though I'm not making them to sell anymore, I have plenty of videos. I got a whole series on skirt making. Hi, Teresa. Good to see you here. I don't recall if you've managed to make it into one of the live shows, so I'm glad to see. Maybe you have. I do try to look through the chat later on in the day, because then I'm going to figure out what part of the video I download the video, and then I use that to make like a separate video that gets published a few weeks later. But okay. Anyway, we're about ready to start. I got one more minute according to the clock on my computer. So it's good to see so many people coming in. I think it's first live. That's what I thought. I do try to keep up and see who all's coming in. You love my autumn. Thank you for that. My autumn decoration. So it is autumn decorations, but it's also part of my Sukkot decorations as well. So I've got, that's what this up here isn't my ceiling. It's actually kind of a chiffon type fabric I hung. And then I've got this kind of this, what do you call it? Terracotta and some burgundy fabric strips that I have hung around here with some leaf and whatever hung around there. And so we've been trying to hang out in here more, eating at this table rather than in our true dining room. There's more room in here anyway. But we were really going to be serious about going camping this year, but it's just not working. And you know what? I'm really glad because, like I said earlier, we got a storm going on. This would be terrible weather to be camping in. Terrible, because the grounds are just saturated, even in our area where we're used to getting lots and lots and lots of rain. Sukkot, or Feast of Tabernacles. People might be more, Sukkot's faster to say. I usually try to stick to the English versions that people are familiar with. So Feast of Tabernacles. So it's really a great time of the year, especially when you learn about all the many things it stands for. You know, it part of it, when God first implemented it to his people, it was about the harvest time. It was the end of the harvest year. And everything, in fact, it was called at the time, it was called the Feast of Ingathering. Then later it got changed to the Feast of Booths or Feast of Tabernacles, because it also then at that point, once they got into the Promised Land, became a time of them remembering their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness and living in tents. So, and there's more to it than that. It's really, you know, even if you don't believe that you have to keep these feasts like I did for so long, I always knew it was a good idea to learn about them. And so just learning about them, if you're a believer, man, it really is eye-opening and exciting when you realize what all this stuff stands for. So anyway, there is a reason. It's 1 minute after 12, so it's time for me to get started. So hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. Hope you're all doing great. God is good all the time, and thanks for being here. So let's get started on the topic, and we are talking about the diversification of our food storage. Now, I did a video about this, I think a year ago or sometime within the past year, where I said 3 ways that you can diversify your food. And I don't know that I'll cover all the details I put in there. I don't remember, but I have a few more things I know I do want to go over. And I think in this last Monday's video, maybe tomorrow's video, I might mention a few things that I'm going to cover today, but I want to go into more detail. Now, the first thing I'm going to start with is talking about, I'm getting better at the shofar, Teresa, but Patrick, we have the bigger one. It's right here. And we have a smaller one. Patrick's actually better at using the smaller one, and I'm better at using this bigger one. And I'm getting better at it. It's fun. It gets the dogs howling, though, every time. So anyway, the thumbnail that you would have seen. I know I'm getting I've already had questions on that. And I want to explain that before I get more into this, because that is kind of key into a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about. That picture is an older picture. It's about 4 years old. And it was taken before Patrick created, which was within this past year, these wooden slats with these little, you see that little thing there? And I have a video on this if you want to see more about that. And I have a little bit of, maybe a little clip or two that shows Patrick making it. But these things, because of the type of shelves I have, just slide in like this, and I can put them anywhere on those shelves. And it's far more stable than the needy homesteader. Wow, it's so good to see you here. Anyway, yeah, and so this is a lot more sturdy than the bungee cords you'd see in the thumbnail picture. And I knew the bungee cords were not going to be sturdy enough, but they were something. And what kind of spurred me into doing that was the time so there's a middle, so it's my oldest son's old bedroom. That after he moved out, we converted it into our pantry. And so we have shelves along the back walls, you walk in, the windows to the far right, there's shelves all the way across that wall. and on the door wall, and then going right down the middle of the bedroom is another set of shelves. So I'm on one side and I'm restocking my peaches. I just got done canning peaches and I'm moving everything around and I'm pushing it in there. The jar fell off from the opposite side because I'd pushed a little too much, shattered, peach juice went everywhere. Oh, it was a horrible mess. I think there's still peach juice somewhere in there, you know, on a wall somewhere. I don't know. I tried to clean it all off, but what a mess. So that reminded me yet again that at least, if nothing else, for the sake of my silliness and my klutziness, I need to be a little more proactive at getting things set up better. So this happened a few years ago. So I at least got myself some heavy duty bungee cords to put on there until we could figure out what exactly we wanted to do. And Patrick could design something that was going to work. And so then last year, he came up with this. So if you watch that video, which I did put the link to my food storage and preparedness playlist in the description box, and I moved that video. It's got over 90 videos in it. I don't remember how many. So I moved that particular video clear up to the very top of the playlist. So that will be easy to find. When you go right into the playlist, it'll be right there. So you can see, you'll know when you see the thumbnail that that's it. And it's called Hardening Up Our Food Storage. So that was one of the steps we took. So part of the reason of diversifying is there's many reasons why. Most recently, my focus has been rethinking some of my diversification in order to make sure I have plenty of food that is not solely in jars, because I love storing so many things in jars. Now, I have lots of things that are not stored in jars, and I'll be going over that. But then also thinking of ways, because the massive earthquake they've been predicting for many years. For Willow, hi Willow. Willow's from my area. Willow Roundtree. I can't believe you're in here. So good to see you. Anyway, so this massive earthquake they're predicting for our area, for that they've been predicting for many years, that I think even putting any kind of padding between the jars it may help, but it will be pretty much fruitless because we're talking massive. And at any rate, so with that in mind, though, I'm not beyond thinking about ways to pad. A lot of people come in and say, oh, well, you should put socks around it. Well, first of all, I don't know. Some of y'all must have some pretty dang big feet. We don't have really massive feet around here. So that's part of the reason. And I have so many jars. I'm talking lots and lots. I've never counted them. We don't even have that many new socks that we're currently wearing that I'd be willing to cut up and put the tubes of them over or just use the socks. You know, I have to go buy all new socks. And my socks would definitely not fit because I wear a 3.5 to 4 in girls' shoes. A 6 in women's is too big. I've had to, in some cases, buy 6s just because it was all I could find. But yeah, it's not worth it to me to cut up a bunch of socks and then have to go buy a bunch more socks. And even then, I still wouldn't have enough socks with what we have on hand. I think the only padding that would do any good at all is to put a good fat bubble wrap around every single jar. I'm sorry, but what a pain. Would it be worth it to be able to keep all my jars from breaking? Yes, on one hand, but here's the other issue. Something like that is going to take up so much space. So that would mean I would be down at least one row of jars for every shelf. That would mean I'd need a whole another set of shelves to put the jars that I can no longer fit on my shelves on. Then you have the whole thing where you've got to, okay, I can't see what's in this jar because it's all covered up. And I do have my stuff organized, like all my meats in one area, my vegetables in another area, my fruits in another area. But still, I like to be able to see the jars. So I am kind of still thinking of other ways that I can kind of harden up those a bit or pad things a little bit that won't take up so much room, like maybe at least thin layers of cardboard in between. But even then, there's going to be an issue in some way. So to me, I'm looking more at, okay, let me look over the other types of food and other ways of storing. So I have plenty of things, like all of my grains are, except for those things I keep handy. Like I have a big jar of grains I keep in here because my grain mill's in here, and I use a blend. So for my breads, I'm finding my favorite right now is a 50-50 hard white wheat and barley, which of course I get all that from Azure Standard. And then I just have that all mixed and ready to go when I'm ready to grind up some flour for breads. But other than that, all of my grains, my oatmeal, my wheat grains, my beans, except for the beans I get from my own garden, the dry beans, all of the beans that I buy in bulk, flours, anything like that, rice, those get stored in large buckets. Typically what I try to do is to keep them in the, especially with Azure Standard, because they at least pack their stuff in paper bags. And then I'll put the paper bag inside of a bucket. I don't have to worry about those things breaking. Now, for the things that go into longer term storage, especially those things that are off site, then I will use Mylar, because Mylar is going to help and then seal it up good. I don't use oxygen absorbers. I find them an absolute waste of money. And what I do is push as much of the air out as I can, take my flat iron, or if I have the Ziploc kind, then I zip it, or I take the flat iron, which is all it gets used for now. I only straighten my hair for a short period of time. Like, it's not worth it, especially where it rains. It rains once and it all goes curly again. Anyway, and then I just seal it up that way. And then, yeah. Now, with that said, one thing to think about when you're using plastic buckets, and I don't always think to say this, is that if you have a massive rat or mouse problem, they can and will chew through plastic buckets, which is why I use the Mylar, because that's going to help prevent the scent from getting through the bucket. So that's going to work better than paper. I like paper better because generally it's safer, but remember, in a really tough situation, food's still going to be food. And, I would rather have food that was packed in plastic than have no food at all. So that's why I have to kind of look at that. So as far as the bucket thing, if you're having to put your food in a place where rats are a real problem, consider galvanized garbage cans. I don't think they can chew through that. And that might be a better choice. So you have diversification as far as ways the ways you're storing stuff, so obviously we've talked about different types of food preservation. In fact, it was either last week or the week before, we were talking about different types of food preservation. So we have canning and dehydrating and so on. But then even like with your dried goods, there's still other ways that you can pack things up. You don't have to vacuum seal everything in jars, which is what, again, I love to do. But when I buy things like, let's say, either foods I just want excess of or foods I don't grow, such as bananas, and I get them from Mother Earth Products. One reason I like Mother Earth Products, their link is always in my description. They carry a lot more organic stuff now, and they pack it already in these Mylar bags like this, and you can order any size you want. You got little tiny ones for samplers, and then you can get some bigger bags. I know at least this size are in these sealed Mylar bags that have a Ziploc, so even if you open it, you can still, okay, it looks like they actually warned me that there's ads coming. Oh, I can skip them. Oh, that is so cool. Okay, anyway, the thing about the live shows is they don't make it where, like through the rest of my videos, I can make it so there's no mid-roll ads. But for some reason with the live, when you're going live, you don't have that option. So I set it so they only play like every 30 minutes. And then once I'm done and the video is done processing or whatever it does, I then can go in there and remove the mid-roll ads. So they're only ads at the beginning. Anyway, just so you know, I could make more money having all those mid-roll ads, but I find them highly annoying. So at any rate, yes. So you can reseal these things up because of the Ziploc. So I have like a, a few boxes out at our off-site location for food storage of things like this, especially things that we don't already grow or things that I use a lot of and maybe don't grow enough of, such as carrots. And then we only just finally got raspberries again, raspberry plants again. So I probably won't need to do this, but I still have freeze-dried raspberries from Mother Earth Products. And so something like that, you don't have to worry about it breaking. But just like with the plastic buckets, if there's going to be rats or other types of rodents that will chew through it, they will chew through Mylar. It's about also trying to, get things wherever it's located in, get that area as sealed up as possible. So the area that we have our off-site food storage is pretty well sealed up. I can't imagine any rodents being able to even get in there. So you just got, no matter what type of food storage you use, there's always going to be an issue. Glass is great because it's the least toxic when it comes to storing it into a receptacle, but glass breaks and it's heavy, as someone else pointed out. It's not something that, or something like this, I can just grab and go. I can carry 3 of these in one hand. I can't do that with 3-quart jars of dehydrated fruits and vegetables, or freeze-dried, especially because freeze-dried takes up way more room than dehydrated does. And but here's another thing, another example. I have a lot of, is this the Judy's? Yeah. Even though I get my whole milk powder from Azure Standard now, I do have a lot stored up from Judy's. You can get this on Amazon. They carry, it's non-GMO, hormone-free, made in the U.S. It's not specifically labeled as organic, but at any rate, it's in this nice, really thick bag that's sealed up, just like the Mother Earth Products bags. So I have a lot sealed up like this. I don't re-vacuum seal, especially when it's packed so well. I'm not going to take all that stuff out and re-vacuum seal it into jars. There's no point in it. And it's lighter weight. It's something I can grab and go. But I also have buckets. Literally, I have a whole 5-gallon bucket full of whole milk powder that I put it in the Mylar bag, sealed it up, and put it in a bucket that's in our offsite location. I also have a bucket of the real butter powder that I was getting from Hoosier Hill Farms. But now more places like Anthony's Goods now has the butter powder. I don't think Azure Standard does yet. They do have other dairy products, so you can get dried and powdered. And but yeah, I have those too. So I do really like the butter powder. I just don't always remember to use it, but I actually have a video coming out soon where I talk about using your different dairy powders, and I talk a bit about the butter powder, and it works great as a replacement for like shortening in biscuits, shortening, or even butter. I was surprised. I just decided to try it and was surprised to find it worked great for biscuits. So I haven't tried the Anthony's butter powder. I have a ton of the Hoosier Hills, so I haven't tried Anthony's because I have a lot of butter powder. Hey, Mr. Rain, and he's upside down. He could pop in here, come sit in here if he wanted to, pull up a chair right next to me. I'm sure you guys wouldn't mind. Maybe I'd mind. I don't want to get pinched. Anyway, so of course, if he's sitting in there on his own computer, then he can chat from his own name. But so back to the topic before my husband distracted me. Do I need to pull out the skillet? Okay, let me look at my notes. That might help get me back on track. So I did talk about the hardening up, the supports, the padding. And yes, please, I know that Heather was already doing this and some other people. Throw in your ideas in the chat so other people can, because there's things I'm either going to forget or not think of, especially because everybody's going to be different and what's going to be most necessary to them. So I mentioned the buckets, the galvanized garbage cans, the Mylar, storing items in the containers they came in if the containers are well sealed, and then finding creative other places to store your food. So that's another way you can diversify. So part of it is, about the diversification of ways you're storing it is to consider all of the possibilities that could happen. So if it's rats and mice, if it's flooding, if it's fire, if it's earthquake, and making sure you have food stored in different ways so that something will make it through. And then also the other idea is that I've mentioned in the past is considering other places to store your food. Now, it can be simply about being creative with where you're at. And I mentioned this recently about how the lady, I think it was in my other live show, where she was even taking apart doors and storing soup packets in the doors and just finding as many different odd places that she could hide food away. And this can be the great idea about that is if you're ever afraid of looters, is maybe disguising the food in different places. Mr. Rain is coming in. I'll scoot over this way so he can pull up a chair over here. If he wants to sit, he's bringing me a skillet. I think he doesn't want me to use the full size skillet, but this would still put a pretty good dent in his head. That's if you want to come sit down. You don't have to. Anyway, I got distracted again. Thanks, Mr. Rain. What was I saying? Of the places, the creative places and ways. You can scoot over a little bit more if you want to.
I'll be part of
the background noise.
Yeah.
My backup singer.
So it's raining.
No, don't sing.
It's raining cats and dogs. And
It
all
is.
Kinds of other.
Yes, it's raining everything out there. I know in Spanish, they say it's raining buckets. And that's probably a little more accurate for here. Raining tanks.
Yeah.
It's raining a lot. It's very, very wet.
55-gallon drums.
55-gallon drums. So anyway.
So what were you saying before you so rudely interrupted?
So it's talking about being creative with the places you store. So if it's, again, if you're thinking of looters, is thinking of great ways that you can hide your food storage. So you're going to have your standard pantries and stuff, and that can be a good place to, someone, and you comes in, breaks into your place, and here's the kitchen cabinets and whatever. But I did do a video on small space food storage, where I kind of show some different ideas that I utilize, but also, and some of those are places that food is just hidden, but it's also a way that I can just make more room to store food. But then, and then I also presented some other ideas that I found online and pictures I downloaded. Did you have something to interject? Is it important?
Nothing intelligent.
Then we'll move on. But also,
get a big stick.
Also considering there goes that support for the shelf, but it wasn't supported enough for itself. I'm sorry, it's on. Stay focused. Offsite places. So that's going to be harder for some people, because I know if you don't have another piece of property where you can go store stuff, that, I almost feel bad even mentioning that. But remember, there's other things that you can consider, such as, let's say you have family or friends that maybe aren't into putting up a lot of food, but they have a lot of space in their shop, in their pantries, because they shop day by day. One thing to consider is, is that me on your computer in the other room?
You're talking in about 2 rooms.
Right? I'm hearing myself in stereo. Is consider, working out a deal, and not expecting them to let you store your food there for free, but say, hey, if you're willing to let me store some stuff here, then this can be something we can both work off of in the case of an emergency, and that way you'll have food and I'll have this other place to store food. So that can be something to consider as well. And this is another one that's going to cost money, and I really don't even know what storage units cost. I have no idea.
Well, the nice thing about the space in somebody's shop, you're borrowing space for
bartering space.
food.
Yeah.
and
But
you're networking as well.
right, exactly. And that's why I really like that idea when I was thinking about that one. And I don't know if I came up with that idea on my own. I kind of doubt it. I think I probably heard that from somebody else. But anyway, a storage unit, might be cheaper than renting a house or another building somewhere else, but it's still going to be a monthly fee. But that might be, you could get the smallest storage unit, and you can pack a great amount of food in something like that. So storage units usually say no food. However, they are mostly worried about bugs and rodents. Right. So
Well,
if
the
you,
nice thing, can I interrupt?
yep,
So the nice thing, we have a shipping container. Actually, a couple. I looked around and found some on sale, but typically those are going for about like $3,500 per unit. And the nice thing about a shipping container is that it's strong, durable, and movable, and secure. It's ready to lock up and everything. So those are a real nice alternative to where once you buy those, you don't have to rent.
right. And
And
some
then you can
people,
keep it close
oh,
on a property
sorry.
or hide somewhere.
Some people are bringing up, and I see this is something I wouldn't know, just like I don't know about what they cost. A couple people are bringing up the fact that a lot of stores units say no food. However, like someone else mentioned, like number 10 cans, that's another way to store food. You can get number 10 cans. Like when I first started stocking up on extra, like dried foods, freeze-dried foods, just to kind of fill up our pantry, I was getting the Honeybill in number 10 cans and putting that up. And they're lightweight, and they're pretty rodent resistant and moisture resistant. And I don't think that would be an issue. I don't know if rodents can actually smell food through cans.
Yeah, but they can smell it on cans.
True.
Rodents typically don't like the smell of metal. But
Yep. And there's no electricity. But the thing is, I'm looking at more dried foods. You wouldn't have to worry about whether or not it gets too hot or too cold in there. It's unlikely it would. So what do we see? We've rented one before we moved to the city, $280 a month. Ooh. See, the same size is $70 a month, just a few hours away. Wow. Wow, massive difference.
that's why I recommended like a small, you can get those shipping containers in 8, 10, 20, and 40. I like the 10-foot one that we have and the 20-foot one because I can actually move those with the equipment that I have.
Right.
They're a little more readily available. If you don't have a piece of equipment, obviously there's somebody around that can move a 20-foot container and more than likely has an equipment trailer that would fit on. Versus a 40-foot container, they're a lot more cumbersome, harder to move. Yes, you got more storage, but 2 20-foot containers, then you can kind of separate some of your materials that you're storing in there and organize a little bit better. But the short shipping containers, they're easier to move.
And you can put a lot of food in those short
them,
ones. A lot of food in those short ones. So, and I like having all the different ideas, but we also have to consider people's space and pocketbooks. Now, not everybody's going to have a space to put a shipping container or even the funds to purchase one. I think we got that small one for pretty dang cheap.
We got it for a really good deal.
We got both of them for a really good deal.
I was able to go move those myself, but
Right.
Usually there's somebody around that you can hire to move those relatively inexpensively. But the nice thing about those, once you make that investment, the money's already spent. So you don't have to keep on renting something or keep on paying out for additional, and then it's somebody else's property. In the event of an emergency, you don't have to. You have control over your storage container at that point, and they're mobile. That's the one nice thing about
This
it.
comment from Michigan Daffodil. My county won't allow shipping containers on property. Lame. Own enough land and put it behind a building or pine trees. Problem solved. I agree.
Yeah, and then keeping them
I
shaded will keep your temperature
Right.
from fluctuating in the summer and the winter a lot better. Believe it or not, even in the wintertime, trees have a little bit of an insulative value, and you can actually put spray foam insulation or panel insulation in those
And that
things.
will,
It's really
sorry.
important to think about if you're doing something like that to also make sure that they're vented. You can actually buy vents for the shipping container
Right.
as well.
So that, Lori, hopefully that kind of helps answer your question there about the heat and humidity. So yeah, if you can find a place to put it where it can stay shaded, because you got to think in the summertime, that's when the trees are all full of leaves and they're going to provide shade. But then, having a place where it can stay insulated from getting too cold. But yeah, and the humidity, vents do help with that. It's all going to, again, the reason I'm tossing out all these ideas is that you've got to work with what you have. Okay, you got to work with your pocketbook, obviously, the space you have, and according to the climate you live in. That's all going to vary. We live in a cool and very incredibly wet climate, so we rarely have to worry about excessive heat. We don't have, I know very few people in this area that have air conditioners. Some do, but they probably only use it one or 2 days out of the whole year because it rarely gets that hot here. We just learn how to deal with it. Even where I grew up in Wenatchee, where it gets a lot hotter than it does here, I spent a good amount of time living in old homes that didn't have air conditioning. We just learned how to deal with it. But when it comes to food storage, obviously, when you live in a very hot climate, that can be a little more tricky. This is where root cellars come into play. In fact, in Kashmir, where my grandfather, where my dad grew up, and it gets pretty hot there, just like Wenatchee. And they lived in this old home that had the basement. It was just like an unfinished basement with concrete dividing walls and a couple little teeny tiny windows at the top. And it was just the big pantry room, the root cellar. It did it all. Things stayed cool down there. So this is why a lot of pantries, root cellars, that's why these things are underground. Yes, my dad grew up in Kashmir, right back behind where at least I think the treetop apple juice, juice thing is still there. His house was back behind there, right next to the river. So yeah.
Apples and Cotlet's place too, wasn't it? Right next door. Or?
No, but they sold there was a museum just down the road, and there was a back road that went right along the river that went to that museum. And when I would stay out there with my dad after my parents got divorced, my dad, moved back into that house, and then I would walk from the house to the museum almost every day when I was staying out there in the summer. I loved it. And you didn't have to pay back then to get into the museum. I loved it there. So anyway, yeah. Let's see if there was any other questions. Honestly, my show is probably better for temps. Right. So it's just, again, it's a matter of, I have a friend in Moses Lake. Sorry, we're getting off track, but I lived in Moses Lake for a couple of years. My dad pastored a church there for a time. Anyway, I know how flat and hot and dry it is there. So let me look at my notes. I want to make sure that I'm covering everything. So I talked about the thumbnail photo so people would understand, because I knew they would ask questions. Oh, but I know some of the other questions people are going to have when they see that. I get this one every time when they see the pictures of that. And that is the jars. There's two of them. The jars stacked on top of each other, and the jars on the bottom that have the rings on them. So let me show you something. So this is a jar of homemade home canned meatballs. And all that stuff at the top is just fat, so don't freak out. You see this? You see how loose this is? When I'm stacking jars, there's a difference between, now this is dehydrated, so the band goes on tight. I always put the bands on dehydrated foods. So when you hear the whole rumor about you can't put, leave the bands on the jars when that's all about canning, using like water bath canning or pressure canning. So it's fat. Yeah, I know it's tricky trying to figure out which way to go.
That right there is botulism.
It is not. Stop it. Stop it. Okay. Skillet. This is inadequate. Anyway, so there's a difference between leaving the bands on and then, putting the bands back on for a specific use. So here's what I do. When my things are sealed, let's just say I got done canning this today. I had it cooling down, everything pinged. And then once it's cooled off, I take the jar and the band and I wash it really good. There's several reasons why you're supposed to take the bands off. One reason is because if you just leave it on there and don't clean it and let it dry, it can rust to the jar and it will be almost impossible to get off when that happens. The other big scare that people like to tell you about, which it would be incredibly rare, but it is possible. And that is that if your jar comes unsealed and then you have this band on there really tight, what it can do is then form a false seal. Personally, I have a hard time understanding how that could happen because there would still have to be some kind of pressure. Well, then what can happen if botulism happened to sneak in there while it was unsealed and then it reseals and you wouldn't know it, and it can grow in there and you wouldn't be able to see it, you wouldn't be able to taste it, you wouldn't smell it. So but what I do is when I'm stacking the jars, which yes, is acceptable. And you can even find this on the government website. What is it? The canning food preservation website, whatever it's called. You can go in there. I looked it up myself. And you can stack your canned jars, water bath, pressure canned, up to 3 high. That's what they say. You can stack them up to 3 high. They don't recommend going any higher than that because then the weight becomes too much. So I don't have any jars stacked more than 3 high. What I do though on the jars that are on the bottom, so if you look closely at that picture, you would see that I have a layer of cardboard in between the bottom layer and the next row up. And then I have the jars on the bottom, the lid is sitting, the band is sitting on there loosely. So to me, what that does is that provides a little more protection from having that weight directly onto the lid because it's going onto the rim or onto the band, which is then putting more weight onto the rim. And so that's what I do.
And so like the reason why she would do that is because then all the weight is not on the lid itself, but on the band itself. And then so if this does come unsealed, it won't seal itself again.
It shouldn't.
She's been trying to botulize me for years, and it hasn't happened. So we've had some pretty old food here we've eaten.
Well, that's the meatballs are from 2020. Yeah. They're 4 years old.
Yep.
So anyway, and then as far as the botulism thing, you got to do what you got to do to keep your family safe. But just know that I've looked into the actual statistics that you can find online on these .gov sites of, how many cases of people dying from botulism obtained from home canned foods. It's incredibly rare. And I know I shared this recently too in another live show. It's incredibly rare. You're far more apt to get E. coli or salmonella from store-bought and packaged foods than you are from getting botulism from your own home preserved foods. So, we can talk all we want about the good and the bad of all this. There is that part of me that still keeps wondering, is it all just a part of the fear mongering that people used to never worry about that stuff? And all of a sudden, well, you can get botulism from home canned foods. And so then everybody stops, doesn't want to can their foods at all, even going with the so-called safe methods because they just know they're going to kill their whole family.
Fear is a cripple.
Yeah. I mean, we can live in fear of everything. We can step off our back deck and fall and break our neck.
I'm scared to walk in the room because I might get clobbered with
a frying pan. See?
So I'm afraid.
Let's see. Jesus says, I saw a salmonella recall today for some candy. Candy. Good gravy.
Well, the thing about it is when you start canning your own stuff and taking care of your own meat and your own vegetables and food and whatnot, you know what kind of cleanliness and care is going into your product.
Exactly.
You go to a factory, these people are putting in 9 to 5s. You have no idea what kind of bad day they're having and how much they don't care where that food goes. So,
someone here says they got salmonella from fresh peaches at Aldi's.
Yeah, it can happen.
Gravy. Someone asked, I love pressure canning. Someone said canned foods are nutritious. Is that what you heard? Well, yeah, they're nutritious. I'm not sure if you're saying like the common rumor I hear is that canned foods have no nutrition left in them. That's a lie. It's a lie.
No, people back in the day, they used to can their stuff all the time. In the wintertime, they used to carry them through the winter.
How did they survive if they weren't getting any nutrition?
Nobody even called them a prepper.
Yeah, because it was just the way of life. So here's the thing. Anytime you cook your food, you heat your food, there are certain nutrients you're going to lose. You're going to lose your vitamin C, you're going to lose your vitamin A, probably some of your Bs. The vitamins are the ones that are most susceptible to being destroyed by heat. But you're still going to have other nutrients. You're still going to have your calories, your fiber, your carbs, your minerals, and there's always something else that I tend to forget. They're still going to be there. It's not like you lose every teeny tiny bit of nutrition. And I've heard that one too. And it's like, that's insane. It goes along with the same idea of, well, freeze-dried food preserves far more nutrients. Well, far more is definitely a massive exaggeration, but any nutrients that get saved in freeze drying get lost as soon as you cook those foods. So if you're taking your freeze-dried foods and you're making a soup out of them or a casserole or whatever, anything that you're cooking, whatever nutrients it saved, which are simply just a few vitamins at most, you're going to lose them as soon as you cook it. So it's silly to use that as an excuse. If you like freeze-dried foods, you love freeze-dried foods, and it's worth it to you. I mean, yes, I stock up on some freeze-dried foods, but it's not worth it to me to buy a freeze dryer for it. But if you love it and it's the best thing for you and you like working with it, because one of the benefits of freeze-dried is in most cases, they do rehydrate faster and easier than, well, I won't even say most. I would say about 50% than dehydrated foods. So some people would find that easier to use, especially if they're taking them camping, hiking, and whatnot. So I'm absolutely, if it's worth it to you and you're going to eat a ton of freeze-dried foods, yeah, go for it. Get yourself a freeze dryer if you think it's worth the cost and the work and the maintenance and the extra electricity.
There's nothing wrong with having a freeze dryer because it's just another way of putting up your food. But yeah, it's pretty expensive.
Right. And so the only reason I bring that up is because it's not because like people like to accuse me of being anti-freeze dryer or hating on the freeze dry community when that's just absolute nonsense. What it has to do with is I see a lot of people being convinced that freeze drying is the only way to put up food. And yes, freeze dried food lasts a long time. So does canned foods. So does dehydrated foods. They last just as long. You can, canned foods can last 25 years too. So can dehydrated foods. Some dehydrated foods don't hold up as well. Not like dried bananas don't hold up as well as maybe the freeze-dried bananas. But the point is, the whole reason I bring this up is that, first of all, you know, you got all these places that have something to sell you. So they're going to convince you. Look at this. I love that I can skip. There we go. More ads trying to pop up. Anyway, they're trying to convince people by using extreme exaggerations and sometimes flat out lies to buy a product. And maybe that product isn't going to be worth it to you. So before you invest in a bunch of freeze-dried foods like these freeze-dried raspberries, try them first. This is why Mother Earth Products is nice, because you can get samples to see if you're even going to like them. Don't invest in a freeze dryer just because somebody says it's the best thing ever. you need to sample it first, because you may find, like so many other people have found, not all of them, but many people, because they've shared their own stories with me, that they found out they didn't like a lot of the freeze-dried foods, that it was far more expensive to run, and that the thing kept breaking down, and just got too expensive. So there's a lot of things that you need to do your research into, but the same applies to anything you're going to dehydrate yourself or can yourself. Find out if you like it. So here I have some dehydrated golden kiwi. I did not put up a whole jar of this without trying a few slices first, because what if I really hated it? What if it was terrible? I don't want to dehydrate, because they're not cheap. And if I dehydrate a bunch of, I think this is the only jar I have right now. I think I had 2, but I ended up eating the other jar. But what if I put up jars and jars of these expensive golden organic kiwis and didn't sample it first, and then find I just wasted a whole bunch of money on those kiwis and dehydrated them? Nobody's going to eat them. I'm the only one that, he doesn't really care for dehydrated fruits. So I'm the one that eats them.
Unless I'm really hungry.
Yes, you can dry stuff if you live in a dry enough climate. You can dry stuff in paper bags. You can air dry all kinds of stuff. You do not have to have electric dehydrators. If you live in a dry enough climate, there's many ways you can dehydrate. Or if, like us, this time of year, I do dehydrating right next to our wood stove, because we have fires going continually. So, but here to dehydrate, especially fruits and vegetables in the summer, it's too humid. And to just try to air dry, they never get dry, or they mold before they can. And so an electric dehydrator is worth it to me. But those 2 dehydrators right there, still, the 2 of them put together cost a fraction of the price of the smallest freeze dryer. This probably takes up the same amount of space as the smallest dehydrator, but has a lot more space inside for dehydrating. Because I don't know if you guys have paid attention, but like for the smallest freeze dryer, it's like 3 trays, and I think they're only like this wide, maybe this long, maybe
a foot deep, and
yeah, they're not
8 inches wide.
You can't put a ton of food into those, because there's so much stuff that goes into the body of the machine. You just don't have a lot of space on the inside for freeze drying. But again, it's all up to you. If you've got the money and you really, really want one, then it might be a really good investment to you. But I just want to be real with people, because I've seen too many people take their hard-earned money that they saved for years to buy a freeze dryer, just to have it not work on them, or to find that they just really don't like it.
Yeah, and people have been using the power of the sun and fire for thousands of years. And look,
it's something I bring up so often. I feel like I kind of harp on this one too much, but it just kind of, it pains me to see people putting so much money into something and then finding they don't like it. That's why I always say sample your foods before you invest in either the machinery or the time and effort of buying or raising the foods and then dehydrating or canning them and find you hate them. And another one I bring up is that I thought I'm going to try to see if I can dehydrate avocado and see how it turns out. Because that'd be kind of cool if it, I didn't really think it would work, but if I could dry avocados and then powder them up, I can make guacamole whenever I wanted. That would be super cool. So I took a whole avocado, but only took a slice out of that avocado, cut it into smaller slices, and took those and dehydrated them up while I was dehydrating other stuff. I didn't just run my dehydrator for this one little piece of avocado. The surprising thing was they dried up beautifully. The next surprising thing was they powdered up beautifully. I couldn't believe it. And then when I added water, it mixed up really well. It tasted terrible. I am so glad I did not waste that whole avocado, because the rest of it I ate fresh, and it was a delicious avocado. But once it was dehydrated up, it tasted like, gosh, I didn't know how to explain it. It was terrible. It was disgusting. I had to toss it out. And I'm so glad I only had to toss out that little bit rather than the whole avocado or a whole pile of avocados, because those are not cheap, especially in places like here where they won't grow. So yeah, I agree. For me personally, the cost of a freeze dryer does not outweigh the benefits. And again, yep, just like us, your opinion is, I agree with that one. So, but so some people, again, some people will. Some people may find the cost of even just getting a pressure canner is not worth it. Maybe they prefer to have dehydrated or frozen foods. But then there's that other side of things. You still got to think. So that freezer is one of the things I didn't mention. A freezing foods is I have a freezer quilt that I made specifically for my freezer to help keep it insulated, especially in the event of a power outage, which we just, of course, had, because that's what happens here this time of year, especially when you got lots and lots and lots and lots of rain, and then more rain, and then big trees. It just happens, okay? So the quilt will help insulate my freezer. So we didn't, well, the freezer right now is plugged into our solar power, but that's the other thing. If you're going to depend on a freezer, you need to make sure you have some kind of backup. And I talked about this in one of my earlier live shows. I think it was either the first or second one, I don't remember. But you just got to consider all the different options and the ways that you can put up your food that's going to work for you, but also making sure you have some kind of backup, some kind of diversification. So if your freezer goes out, maybe you have backup power, but your freezer goes out. Well, now what are you going to do? Well, you better know how to can and dehydrate. And if you have a freeze dryer, pull that out too, because you're going to need to start putting up all that stuff that's in that freezer. And always make sure you have plenty of stuff that you can help keep it cold for a long period of time, like saving the ice packs, those little ice packs that come like with your Azure Standard orders, your Misfits Market orders, or any other place that you may order fresh foods from that will have to come with ice packs. Save that stuff and pack your freezers full of those things. Not only will they keep it, while you've got power, so they get frozen hard, and that way not only will it fill up all that airspace so that your freezer will stay cold longer, you'll also have them if you need to start taking stuff out and putting it in coolers and then putting those ice packs in there. Anyway, there's a lot of, how are we doing on time? There's a lot of these things that you need to consider. Did you have anything, Patrick, that you would like to add?
Just a little bit of comedy relief if I get anybody to laugh.
You're just a comedy relief sitting there. Just sitting there, comedy relief. Let's see. So, I wanted to bring up, so I was talking about the, the weather, the stormy weather we've had.
Yeah.
Yes. So
power went out yesterday. We didn't skip a beat here.
We were actually out at our friend's house, and they're not set up quite as good as we are for power outages, but they had a fireplace and they got a fire going. They already had candles lit because we were just eating a nice dinner with them because it was Sukkot, and they had a couple of oil lanterns that they lit and a couple of battery operated things they pulled out, and it was fine. It was a nice cozy evening. And then we came home to the power being out here, and of course, no problem. We had our freezers running on solar power. We didn't have to pull out our generator because we still had enough power in the bank to keep those things going through the night. And the power was out all night long, didn't come on until early morning. And then I had my little LED candles that I used as night lights, because by the time we got home, it was about bedtime anyway.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to worry about it. But it's, we had the fire. We saw it. We had a fire going. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is not only because, well, this is just an average. This happens all the time here.
Another test.
I moved here in 1988 to be exact. And
1880.
In 1988. And that's one of the things I figured out about this area is that power outages, especially in the winter, are just a way of life. And what still amazes me to this day is that people in this area, people who have been born and raised here, are still not prepared. And I happened to see in Facebook in one of the groups, somebody was complaining about the power outages. Why does it take so long? Wah, wah, wah. And it's like, and so another lady did this as well, but I tried to politely go in there and said, one thing I learned when I moved here quite quickly is that power outages are a way of life. When you live where we live, they happen all the time. And so, especially nowadays, it does not cost much to just buy a pack of 24 little LED powered. It's $10 for a 24 pack of those LED candles which I think I have
Can you do the math on those?
one sitting there. Yeah. And they're far less expensive than buying the wax ones, and they're safer. And so, you know, I showed these in a recent live show, but yeah, you just turn it on and the battery, it can last for a very long time. And it might not be enough to read by, but it's at least something you can have those sitting all around your house. You don't have to put them in a votive holder either, because they're not real flames, and it's safe. You can leave them on all day, all night. You don't have to worry about it. But, you know, oil lanterns, all that kind of stuff, you know, it's like, so I was telling her, I was just kind of throwing out some really cheap ideas, you know, just keep some of that stuff on hand.
And these are cheaper. Whoop. Well,
Thanks, Patrick.
Was good.
It'll still be good. It'll still be good.
But she did some math on these things, and they're like $10 for a dozen of these things.
For 2 dozen.
For 2 dozen. And so
with the battery included.
You did some sort of a test. You turned one on and had it lit for.
Seemed like it lasted. I kept it on day and night straight.
For 5 days.
I think for 5 days. It was still lit by the end of that time, but it was pretty dim.
And so you had.
And then I changed out the battery, because I did buy a big pack of batteries, because I figured that would be more eco-friendly than constantly throwing these out. But for as cheap as these are, really, you could throw these out and just buy another pack, because a pack of 24 votives can be as much as $50. Some cheaper. I don't know what they'd be at like Walmart, because I don't go there. I've never looked online to see what they are there, but I've seen the lowest price. I was just, when I was comparing prices, looking on Amazon, was $24, $25 for a pack of 24 wax votives that are only going to last each one a few hours, where one of these can last for several days with a constant run. And these ones are not rechargeable. We do have things that are rechargeable, and I talk about that in that show. And I think,
well, as cheap as you can get these little button.
Yeah, because I did read the number off in the last one, and I don't know if the separate video clip I made from that has published yet, or if that's going to be publishing later. But yeah, it's
a CR 2032 is a pretty popular.
Yeah,
there you go.
And you can buy a big old pack.
Yeah,
of them.
And
we only use them when the power's out anyway, so they last forever. I probably will never need to open up that pack of batteries, but I have them if I need them. So I'll have to pass them down to my grandbabies. Here, you want some candles and some batteries? If they're still good by then, I don't know. But at any rate, my point being is that it still surprises me how few people, even in a place that gets power outages on such a frequent level, that they're still not prepared, and they're still whining and complaining because, you know, and they forget that, you know, and a lot of times it's because they have kids and they don't know how to keep the kids entertained. What did people used to do back before smartphones, Kindles, TVs, and whatnot?
Digital age.
Yeah, read books. You played board games. You know, you just got creative with your time, and that instills a better family time. You're interacting with people, you know, with each other, and building stronger bonds, even if you get mad at the other person because they cheated or they won, whatever the case may be. You're still letting, I don't cheat.
Oh, she can see me.
I can see you right there. Smarty pants. So anyway, yeah, it was good to see you, Wendy. I'm glad you were able to make it. Sorry for the gap.
Hi, Wendy.
Yeah, a lot of people came in. Some people came in that didn't get to make it before. Oh, and I did want to before I go. I did have a couple more questions I want to cover. I think I said this at the beginning, but just in case you guys came in late and missed it, yes, I did finally shoot the video for the butterscotch apple oatmeal bars. But it was a recipe I just kind of made up on the fly, but then I had to make it again to make some tweaks to make sure I knew what I was doing before I came up with a set recipe that I could share with people. But even then, it's not set. I would still, next time I make them, I'm going to do it different yet. I'm probably going to use the Azure standard white chocolate chips, and then maybe add some cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves to it. We'll see. I don't know. That's what I like about creating recipes. You can have a basic recipe to go off of and then just do whatever you want with it from there. Once you have the basics figured out, you know, your ratios of flour to fat and sugar, the rest is simple. So that video, I still have to edit it, and I'm back to being a month ahead on my videos now. So it'll be a while before that one publishes, but I'll have the written recipe ready for you too. And then the other question I just got, these are really, really, really common questions I get on the vinegar making. Someone's like, help, I made vinegar and it's not turning to vinegar. Well, then I find out that instead of putting a cloth cover over the vinegar while it was brewing, they put a cap on it. Or they put what do you call those little things that, well, like an airlock. They got it like a pickling pipe or whatever they call those things. Don't do that if you're making vinegar. You don't do that. If you're making wine or mead, you need an airlock. So let me explain this again. So the airlock has water in it. And what the airlock does is it allows the gases to escape so you don't have some explosive thing going on, but it prevents the water in it, prevents the oxygen from getting in and turning your wine and mead to vinegar. Hence, when you're making vinegar, you need that oxygen exposure. This is why you put either a cloth cover over it, like the jar covers I've made, and I have a video showing you how to make them, or a coffee filter, or even a paper towel, or even just a dish rag, a clean dish rag, and put a rubber band around it. As that cover is just to prevent bugs and dust from getting in. And then the band obviously to hold it in place, but it's still going to allow for airflow. So, and you know, a natural like cotton washcloth, if you're doing that, you want whatever fabric you use on there to be natural. If you use some kind of plastic based fabric, it's not going to have the airflow it needs. So it's got to be cotton or linen, something like that. And let's see. So yeah, it's got, especially in the last 2 weeks, it has to have that oxygen exposure. And if you're using apple scraps, like I did this last time, you've seen the post, I started another batch of apple vinegar. Well, because I was making those apple bars. And so I had all these apple peels and cores, and I threw them into the jar and added some sugar and water. And in under 30 days, I'll have vinegar. So if you're using straight juice and it's a sweet juice, you may not need to add sugar at all. But if you're using scraps that have very little sugar in them, you're going to need to add sugar. If you don't have the sugar, then the ferment doesn't have anything to feed it. So the sugar gets turned to alcohol. About 2 weeks in, it should be mostly alcohol. Then at that point, the bacteria and yeast, or the oxygen exposure is turning the alcohol into acetic acid. That's where you get your vinegar. So if you've had your vinegar sitting for a month, or somebody said like months, and it's still not acidic enough, well, then I found out they had a plastic cover on it. So that's the most common thing. And then with other people, it wasn't acidic enough because they didn't add the sugar they needed. So they just any sugar at all, and it needed it. So if you're making vinegars out of things like herbs, like sometimes I'll make a garlic, oregano vinegar from my fresh garlic and oregano, like garlic greens and oregano from my garden, and then that's what I put in my chicken's water. It definitely has to have sugar. It has to have something to feed it. So those things, oregano and garlic, don't have sugar. So you need the sugar. And that's the other thing. People kind of freak out. Well, it's like, I don't eat sugar. Well, if you're turning it to vinegar, it won't be sugar when it's done. Same concept with soap. Well, if lye is so caustic, how can you make soap with it? Well, you have to have lye to make soap. And the two main ingredients of soap are lye and fat. That's what it is. But once those two get combined and then they go through the process called saponification, they now become soap. They're no longer fat or lye. They're soap.
It's fat lye.
It's fat lye. It's fat lye.
Big fat lye.
It's a big fat lie.
Somebody's asking about
The bands. Oh yeah, I thought
somebody was asking about dehydrated food, leaving the bands on the jars.
I always put the bands on the jars when I dehydrate food, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
It's not absolutely necessary. You know, you got a good seal. It seems like it shouldn't be necessary, but yes, I do. And the reason why, and I put it on snug. So just in case it does lose a seal, well, for one, it's going to help keep the stuff in there fresher. Most stuff will be fine. Most dried foods will be fine if they lose a seal. But some things, like if anything has got fat in it, like you've got meats that have a little bit of fat in there, or bone broth that has, they've dehydrated, has a little bit of fat in there, that stuff can go rancid if it does not stay sealed.
Mold.
So that's something to consider. Maybe not mold. It'd probably have to get damp for it to mold. But here's me. Okay, Miss Combrio here. I'm the kind of person that would, let's say the lid's off this or the band's off this, and it lost the seal and I didn't know it, and I'm reaching up there to grab it off the shelf, and I'm, in a hurry to do one of these numbers. Where do you think all that stuff's going to go? I got to think about how, I do things.
Bull in
right?
China closet.
Yeah. And I have had that happen where I grabbed something, didn't realize I didn't have the band on it or whatever, and dried ingredients went flying everywhere. That was fun. It's always a fun thing.
Stay away from the kitchen when she's at work.
Yeah. Flour everywhere. Patrick tries to steer clear so he doesn't end up getting flour on his clothes when I'm making bread and whatever. So, I do have a pendant light and string lights. Yeah. So, and as I said before, I mean, we're back on the lighting thing, even though I already did a live show on this. The string lights here, even though these are currently just plugged into the public power outlet, I do have the ability to plug those into a solar outlet out there in the hall. And then the ones in our kitchen, dining room, living room, and in the hall, we have some in the hall. Those all plug into solar power when we're getting enough. And the great thing is that LED lights like this use so little power. That's why I do, even though LED lights aren't the best for your eyes, when it comes to needing to conserve your power because you don't have it and you're relying on solar power, you're relying on batteries, the LEDs are going to have a much longer life. And so that's mostly what we use for lighting through our house. Like the overhead lights we have on now, they rarely get turned on. I only turn them on when I'm shooting videos in here. That's it. So it looks like I had a couple more questions, maybe. And if the lid sticks, Patrick can open the jar. Yes. Yes. What kind of batteries do you have for storing your solar power?
I was able to come across some batteries that were taken out of a cell tower. So they're the big, they're like 190 amp hour batteries. And I have several different 12-volt batteries in series to make 48 volts. And so I have several 48 packs to make. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different 48-volt batteries in series to make quite a bit of storage. So that's
definitely better than what we had.
Yeah, they're used.
And these were used.
But, they could die at any time. So yeah, they're working very well. They have a lot more capacity than the lead acid batteries that we had before, which, for what they were golf cart batteries. They lasted for quite a few years, and we used them and abused them, and they were pretty good. But these ones here have a lot more storage.
Right.
And if we run out of battery storage in the wintertime, we got long rainy days, then we have our gas generator backups for that.
Right.
Now
the public power, unless it's out, then we have the gas generator.
Yeah. So the off-grid property that's way out in the middle of nowhere. Matter of fact, it's so far in the middle of nowhere. If you stood right in the middle of the piece of property and took a step in any direction, you'd be getting closer to somewhere. Anyway, that's got a little seasonal stream on it. So I wanted to do a hydroelectric solar hybrid system there. So in the wintertime, I can generate hydroelectric power when the solar's not as prominent, and so they can kind of complement each other. I get more hydroelectric power in the wintertime, more solar power in the summertime to keep batteries topped off. So that's coming up sometime in the future.
Some of the videos that, yeah, because we got a couple of, his videos, I try to have them published only on Wednesday, but then I have all these remastered videos I've been doing from back 2016, 2017, because I think they need to get out there again, better sound quality, a little bit better lighting. So, doing some adjustments to the picture and doing a little more editing to streamline it. So with all those, it's put me out so far for my Wednesday videos that a lot of his videos are going to be out, like not even publishing until like January and February. I might have one or two publishing. I did try to kind of move stuff around so I get some of your newer videos publishing a little bit sooner, but yeah, so some of the more property work and whatnot is going to be, down the road, and I still have a lot more to edit. I forgot which one. Yeah, I'm working on the second one to the whole water thing. That was going to take a while. 4 hours worth of video I have to go through.
The water one?
Yeah, the part 2. No, the chipper.
Chipper one.
Yeah, 4 hours. His videos take
I had bought a chipper for a little Ellis tractor that we have, so I don't have to burn or haul off a lot of the waste that I'm producing through branches and different things from trees that I'm taking down from around the area. I'm slowly cleaning that property up.
And plus we'll mulch for out there.
That's exactly right. So I went and bought a 3-point chipper. It's a WM8H Woodmax chipper, 3-point chipper. And there was some stuff wrong with it. And I knew that when I bought it. So I dumped some money into it and got it going. And I probably got about 10 yards, a good 10 yards of chips made up so far out there. So instead of burning it or finding a place to make it disappear or hauling it off to some sort of landfill someplace where I'm trying to
the most out of all that stuff.
Some soil up there. Yeah, so we can eventually maybe grow something out there, huh?
Right. So I have something I wanted to show you guys. If you were watching my live stream last week, I had to get the link here. I was talking about how I know, Amazon's kind of one of those some people are like, it's so evil, Jeff Bezos, blah, blah, blah. However, I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of US based business or even, other countries that they do pretty good selling their products, their handcrafted products on Amazon and find it. And the thing is, for some people, it works out to be a better deal for them than having a separate website. And so I was mentioning the lady that makes down in Oregon, the Christian lady that makes these spoon rests. So I made sure to bring them in here so you could see them. Just got them washed up because we were using them last night. It's a set of 3. And so these were made, I think, does it look like thimbleberry to you? I think those are thimbleberry leaves. So
maple leaves or something?
No, I think they're thimbleberry. So she picks it does look like maple, but she picks these and then she coats them and shapes them and paints them. And she has different colors. I really liked the fall colors of this one, but she has some like in blues and stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'll give you the link right here to the ones I just showed you. I think I've had them.
Probably right on the thimbleberry.
Because I know she uses thimbleberries and she uses other like berry type leaves that grow.
It's not oak.
Maybe salmon berries too. I don't know. She might use those too. Blackberries. I can't remember. But anyway, if you were curious, you wanted to look at it, she does beautiful work and she has all kinds of different colors. And I saw those. I just had to have them. I love the fact that she was out of Oregon and she was fairly local. But anyway, I wanted to show this because talking about that last week and then I didn't have them handy to show you guys. But they're quite pretty. So question, what do you think of tart cherry juice or capsules for inflammation and or pain? I know that some people find it very useful especially if they have issues with gout. I've read that tart cherry juice is really good. In fact, I had some on hand when I broke my toe, and then I really didn't think it was a broken toe. It was my big toe. It was last year about this time, I think. And it was from a repetitive action I was doing, shampooing the carpet. And it finally dawned on me that's what I did. And so, but because it didn't seem right, and I couldn't figure out why it hurt so much, I was looking up everything. I'm like, is it gout? Well, I know it runs in the family, and my brother had gout, my dad had gout, and so, or my brother still deals with it from time to time. So maybe that's what it is. So I bought some tart cherry juice because I read that that was really good for that, but it didn't help. But it was shortly after that I realized that I had actually broken my toe, and that's why it hurt so dang bad.
Probably because she was kicking.
So then I started treating it like that kind of injury and was doing the soaks with the arnica and the comfrey from my garden and Epsom salts, and it helped immensely. I was also making poultices out of the arnica and the comfrey, and then wrapping it around my toe, and then pulling a sock over it to hold everything in place. So yeah, but that's the extent of my knowledge of tart cherry juice. And I had a friend who was really dealing with gout, and I just happened to have that, and I'm not using it. So I had a bottle of a tart cherry juice concentrate that I hadn't even opened. So I just gave it to her so she could, because I know she was in a lot of pain. I think it helped her. I don't remember. So tart cherry juice is best for helping to sleep. That's right. I'd read that too. I forgot about that. Thank you for throwing that out there. So, see, Georgia, I know you aren't asking me, but boron and MSM has helped. Oh, I just realized I'm not supposed to talk about that. We're not supposed to talk about that on YouTube. It is a taboo subject. So many things are taboo. You have to be careful.
Welcome to free
So
country.
please, YouTube gods, don't destroy me, because I said it out loud.
It's getting freer all the time.
Yeah. Yep. It seems like they're constantly adding more things to their list of naughty, don't talk about that. So I have to be careful. And this is why I like Rumble. However, Rumble's kind of frustrating in its own way, because it's almost, yeah, whatever.
We go broke doing Rumble.
Yeah, we would go. It's not. I'm to the point. I was all excited because I was finally getting a little over $1 a day for all my hard work. Now I'm down to, like, maybe on a good day I'm making 74 cents on Rumble. It's like,
Eureka.
oh yeah, I can't imagine what people would, if people were working a full-time job and getting paid 74 cents a day. Well, I should be fair. I don't do full-time Rumble because I've already got the video, but I do have to put extra work into putting those videos out over there, because I have to go gather new links to put in the description box, because I'm trying to make sure if I have the video over on Rumble that I want to link people to, I got to go find that, and then I got to put that in there. It's still extra work no matter how you look at it. And I'm still going to do it, though. Don't worry. I'm still going to keep putting my videos there, because at least I can still have them there, the videos on topics that we're not allowed to talk about here. But as I said at the opening, if you go way to the top of the chat, or you look down the description box, you can also find me on X, Instagram, and Facebook. So on Facebook and Instagram, it's Rain Country Homestead, just all one word. And then on X, it's Heidi Rain. So yeah, whatever the URL is. But you can find the URLs in the description. And I am on freesteading, though I almost never get on there anymore. Let's see. What about arthritis pain? Turmeric does not work. I have a video. I can't say what's going to work for you pain-wise. And this is something I cover a lot, because when it comes to herbs and using an herb for pain or anything, it's all going to be dependent on the person. And I'm not going to remember all the great many herbs to list off. This is why I did a video several years ago, and you can find it on my channel, the natural remedies for pain and inflammation. Because for me, when I get headaches or whatever, feverfew works really great. And I have my own blend, my own extract I make with feverfew, catmint, and echinacea leaves. I think there's something else I throw. Oh yeah, valerian leaves. And that's been the best blend I've made yet. And it works great for my pain, but it doesn't mean it works for him or that it will work for your friend. So sometimes you have to just keep trying. Get the list and find out how many out there. And I still didn't mention, I don't think I mentioned poppy. Some people will use poppy. I don't know if they're using the seeds or the flowers, but they say that helps too. But I mentioned wild lettuce and many other herbs and other things you can use for pain, even essential oils. It's like, for example, for me, while I was trying to grow these herbs, I was purchasing the seeds and wanting to get them growing. I'm like, I'm going to try using essential oils until then. And so I just rub a little bit of right here when I start to get a headache, a blend of lavender and rosemary oil, and immediately the headache would go away. I can't say that would work for somebody else either, but so a lot of people say turmeric helps them a lot. I haven't found personally for myself turmeric to work well at getting rid of headaches, not near as well as the fever, my special blend. So, which I have a video on, by the way, hops and white willow bark. Absolutely. I know for certain the video I did several years ago, so I don't remember what all I mentioned. I think I mentioned hops. It's a long list. It's a long list, just like with anything else. So it's about finding all those, what they all are, find out if it's something you can use or take. Some people do well with moringa and peppermint. There's so many different types. And so it's about each person kind of taking that personal responsibility, finding out what's out there, finding out what's available to you, and finding out what you can take that will actually help, because everybody's going to be different. People with different allergies, people that are already on certain medications that they might not be able to go off of easily. Certain herbs can interact with those medications. And so you got to know all this stuff. And I'm not a doctor. I don't have any kind of license in naturopathy, anything medical or anything health related. I don't have a license. So, I'm not going to know all the different ins and outs for each person. Even doctors who are highly trained are not going to know exactly what you need. They can just make an educated guess.
Roll dice and throw it.
Well, I know this worked for this person, and I've had them on this amount, and it worked. It may be too much or too little for you. It may be the complete wrong drug. I have a family member that's going through issues like that right now. Even though keep trying to convince them that maybe you should try something else, but some people have a hard time breaking out of that mentality. It's so much easier to trust somebody that has the degree on their wall.
Yeah.
And I get that. I do get it, but it's expensive.
Yeah, some people have adverse reactions to certain medications where some people don't.
And that's what's happening with this family member. They keep having bad reactions to their medications. And anyway, so yeah. But yeah, so it doesn't matter who you go to. It really, even if you're going to a medical professional, you're still going to have to do the research for yourself if you want to be as healthy as possible and find what's going to work for you. So at any rate, it's a 1:22 my time, so we should probably get going. Got some more work to do. I'm thinking my son's going to come over, and I ordered some homemade bagels and croissants from my daughter-in-law because they are absolutely amazing. And she was doing orders. So I said, I want some. So I ordered the jalapeno cheddar bagels and just the standard plain croissants. They're the best croissants and best bagels I have ever had. So I'm hoping he brings them over.
Did we miss any questions?
I don't know. There's the chat's long, so it'd take forever to go back through there. However, I do try to read through that on the replay and pick out questions that I can answer later, either in this and that video or maybe even in next week's live feed. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show for today and enjoyed having my sidekick with me, my special guest. Even if he was a little bit annoying and I had to threaten him with the skillet, which he really brought. Do you remember when your dad used to have you go pick out switches, and if you brought back an inadequate switch, you had to go get a different one?
Well, that broke me into my grading career.
This is inadequate. It is really a cast iron skillet. I only bought it because it was cute. Anyway, so I'm going to let you guys go. And then I got more video workings and chores to do. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, or if it's the middle of the night or early morning, like those of you from New Zealand, I hope you have a great day ahead of you. And thanks for dropping in, everyone. God bless. And let me figure out how to get out of here. You have to click like 1,000 buttons.